This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with Auto Quote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 720. Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. And I wanted to give a long overdue update, but there is a reason that it is long overdue. And if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, you know that I left my marriage in 2023. So that summer, I recorded a short, and I'll put that link in the show notes, and it was really simply announcing my separation and divorce that was coming. And it was a really difficult episode to put out. I have not gone back to listen to it and probably won't, just because it's painful to relive that. And part of what made it painful is coming here and announcing it. And I think what happened for me then, and it was interesting to sort of watch myself from the outside, is that announcing that you are getting divorced again for the second time, obviously you can probably understand that it comes with some shame and stigma. But I thought, like, before I announced it, I was like, oh, this is fine. You know, I've worked on my perspective with that. I really don't see it as a failure. I've talked about that here on the podcast. I don't need to get into it again. But it was interesting to watch me sort of stumble through and have some trepidation with announcing it. And the very good thing that happened from that, and I know this from experience, is that when I announce anything or even just talk about it, it doesn't have to be considered an announcement. It's a declaration. When I do that, no matter how I do it, it tends to do that thing that we all know about. It's the common humanity aspect. And I get messages from y'all who listen to the podcast, who might follow me on social media, just saying either, hey, I've been there, I know it sucks, it will get better, those kinds of messages, and also saying thank you for being brave. And I don't think that announcing your divorce or breakup is for everyone to announce on social media like I do it, but I think that even if you do it on a smaller scale, announcing it to your friends or however you do it, I think it can be a bit of a life-changing experience, both from just announcing that as well as the feedback that you get from other people. And sometimes it might not be great feedback, and that is data for you to possibly set some boundaries. But I wanted to give an update, and it's interesting to me how it's taken me this long. And now I know why. It's because I have been going through a pretty profound spiritual experience over the last two and a half years, as I have been walking through the ending of my marriage. It wasn't just my marriage, it was also the ending of an era for myself of things that I thought were true about life, things that I thought were true about me, things that I thought were true about what I wanted out of life have shifted. And I also find it interesting, but not surprising, that this time frame has come on the heels of perimenopause and menopause, which is perhaps around the corner. I don't know. I still get my period. It's still irregular. who knows when that will be, but I'm deep in perimenopause. I'm many years in perimenopause, as well as I've talked about it on the podcast before. The planet Chiron, if we're talking about astrology, has come back for me. And so for those that are unsure, and this is really the thing that has brought me deep into astrology and now learning how to read birth charts, and it's amazing. Anyway, Chiron is a planet that was in a certain position at the time of your birth. And when we turn, late 40s, early 50s, that planet comes back to the same position that it was in at your birth. It's a very slow moving planet. Obviously, it takes about 50 years to come all the way back around to the same spot that it was in at your birth. And Chiron is also known as the wounded healer. And boy, does it come back to show you that. So if you were born between 1969 and about 1976, your Chiron is in Aries, which is where my Chiron is. And lucky for me, I have what's called and known as a stellium in Aries, meaning I have 3 or more placements. In Aries, I have 4, and one of them is Chiron, so is my sun sign. And so what that means is that for us, for those of you born between about 1969 to 1976, because your Chiron is in Aries, that means that most likely the healing process, the kind of changes that you will feel happening and the process that you will go through during that time in your life will most likely be very bold, very intense, very in your face, just like Aries. So that's kind of how that works. So if you can imagine that my separation and divorce coincided with not only perimenopause, which is a very real physical thing that we go through as women, as well as my Chiron return. And so it was this kind of perfect storm, if you will. And I really mean perfect. It has been life altering, and the very foundation that I have walked underneath has been shook. So that's what's taken me so long to come and give you an update, because I felt like the update needed some content, really. I mean, there's a lot that has happened over the last 2.5 years. And while I'm not here to give you details of the intricacies of my divorce, but I am going to tell you a little bit about what brought me to the decision back in 2023 to begin with. And then I'm just going to kind of wing it and see what happens. Those seems to be the best episodes for you that I get the most feedback from. And so let's get into it. Before I do that, one quick announcement. Writers, aspiring writers. Shannon Kaiser and I are doing a free masterclass on April 14th. We are getting that page set up. It's still pretty early. The link will be in the show notes. And if it's not live yet, if I don't have it yet, then I will check my social media. And also, if you're on my email list, you will hear about it in about a week or so. And so that's coming up on April 14th in the evening. It's really for anyone who's interested, not just in publishing, but if you're interested in writing a Substack or writing poetry for your own personal growth, this webinar masterclass is definitely going to be for you. So stay tuned for that. All right, my friends, I'm going to start by reading these 5 questions that have made their way around social media. You may have heard them before in some kind of content that you've read. And it comes from a TikTok that I saw in passing. And again, you may have heard these before, but I'm going to read them to you. And they're 5 questions that anyone can ask themselves, especially if you're unsure about your relationship. And so if it's a, should I stay or should I go situation that you're in, or you are maybe in a newer relationship and you're not sure, or even if you've been together for a long time and you just kind of want to take inventory of things, here are the 5 questions. If someone told you you're a lot like your partner, would that be a compliment to you? That's question number 1. If someone told you you're a lot like your partner, would that feel like a compliment to you? Question number 2, are you truly fulfilled in your relationship, or are you just less lonely? Are you truly fulfilled in your relationship, or are you just less lonely? The third one, are you able to be unapologetically yourself in your relationship, or do you feel you have to show up differently to please or accommodate your partner? That's an interesting one. The fourth one, are you in love with your partner as they are as a whole right now? Or are you in love with their good side or their potential or the idea of them? That's number 4. And then the last question is, would you like your child, future child, or imagined child to date someone like your partner? So I heard those questions after my former husband and I had decided to end our marriage, and they shook me just as much as they would have if I was still in the relationship. And here's the thing, I wish that I would have heard those while I was in the relationship at various times of my relationship, because looking back, I think that what can tend to happen is that we sort of surrender to whatever's presented to us, because thinking about a different path, thinking about going in a different direction is so painful. So what happens is we start to look for any evidence of what we are in is easier. And I think for a lot of us, that's not that hard to do. When you're in a relationship that isn't, it's not abusive or it's not terrible, and especially with as difficult as things are socially, culturally, economically, I think that if you find yourself in a relationship where you have an opportunity to be still, in other words, it's easier to have a dual income. You have created a life where you have routines, where you're still essentially kind to each other in your partnership. And the way I describe it is life is pretty easy. Life's pretty easy. My life was easier when I was married. And a lot of that was because economically it was easier, and logistically it was easier than it is now. But was it easier on my soul? Was it easier on my immune system? Was it easier on my hopes and dreams? Was it easier on the part of me that desperately wanted to grow and expand? In other words, I think that questions like those ones that I mentioned, can be very helpful in terms of shifting your mindset and getting you really used to staying in curiosity as much as possible. That's where you start to ask yourself questions and hold loosely to the answers. In other words, the questions are such that they aren't existential. They aren't going to you don't ask yourself questions like, should I stay or should I go? You ask yourself questions like the 5 that I mentioned before, so that you can hopefully get to a place where you can answer that bigger question yourself. That's self-coaching. That is having a curious mindset. That's having a growth mindset versus a fixed one. And that's really ultimately what I want for my clients. It's what I want for the people that read my books. It's for the people that listen to this podcast. My biggest wish for you is that you can learn how to do the things that I know how to do for yourself. So you don't have to rely on your life falling apart before you make changes to it. That's really ultimately my hope for everyone. That I get kind of, I'm out of a job eventually because everyone can do it themselves. All right, I'll get off that soapbox. Quick ad break. When we get back, I'm going to read you a quote about how your relationship might be making you sick. Okay, we'll be right back.
At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes. At the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today and let us surprise you.
1 second, you're finally cleaning out the gutters. The next, the fire alarm blares from inside. Smoke billows out the kitchen window. These are the wake-up calls that happen daily. In 1 second, everything can change. ADT knows that nobody wants to feel unsafe or unprepared for an emergency, especially in their own home. That's why they offer affordable DIY security systems you can set up yourself and monitor from virtually anywhere with the ADT Plus app. They're customizable so you can set up the system that works best for you and keep an eye on it in real time. And ADT security technology is designed for peace of mind by making it easier for first responders to identify your house. They have the most company-operated monitoring centers in the industry, which means you'll get the alerts that matter for you and your home. You tackle that to-do list, ADT will help make sure your home's protected. When every second counts, count on ADT. Visit ADT.com to learn more.
This is a Monday.com ad. The same Monday.com designed for every team. The same Monday.com with built-in AI, scaling your work from day one. The same Monday.com with an easy and intuitive setup. Go to Monday.com and try it for free.
Okay, we're back. I hope that those questions were helpful for you. And they're going to be over in the show notes. If you want to grab those, they'll be there. The other thing I want to talk about from a update standpoint a little bit comes from a quote that I saw on social media. And so I ran to write it down and find out more about the book. And it's actually from someone's work that I follow a decent amount, and that's Dr. Gabor Maté. And this particular book is When the Body Says No, The Cost of Hidden Stress. So I have not read this whole book. I deeply respect Dr. Gabor Maté's work, but I have not read this book. The link to it will be in the show notes. And here is the quote. There's a part in here where he is quoting another doctor here, and so you'll hear that. A partner who must suppress his or her own needs for the sake of the relationship is more likely to develop physical illness as well. Hence, the greater incidence, for example, of autoimmune disease and non-smoking related cancers among women. Quote, the existence of a mind-body link and a person-person link means that it is possible for anxiety in one person to be manifested as a physical symptom in another person, Dr. Kerr writes. As is the case with the emotional dysfunctions, the one prone to develop symptoms is the spouse who adapts most to maintain harmony in the relationship system, end quote. So essentially he's writing a little bit of a summary from someone else's research around the link of autoimmune disease, non-smoking related cancers among women, and how the prevalence is higher when they are in a heterosexual relationship. And the research is pretty staggering, and it's wild to me to think that this isn't talked about more often. And perhaps it's because, it's not taken seriously in academia, or who knows why, or probably just because it impacts women more. Anyway, I cannot tell you how many women I have met who also have an autoimmune disorder. I'll bet there's many of you who are listening who are middle-aged, around my age perhaps, who have been diagnosed maybe for many years. Or maybe there's plenty of you listening who are experiencing symptoms that might eventually lead to a diagnosis of an autoimmune disorder. And this particular research, it is not surprising to me at all. And it's also incredibly painful for me to see the link and to understand that sometimes the link where women in particular are in a higher incidence of being diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, and they are also in a marriage where they are the primary caretaker, where they are the ones doing the vast majority of the emotional labor, where their nervous systems have felt like they've never had a chance to rest because they are constantly mothering their partners. And by mothering, that can look many different ways. And that can also be that they are accommodating for their partner. That question that I asked before the break about Are you able to be unapologetically yourself, or do you feel like you have to show up differently to please or accommodate your partner? I also think there's something there and something to be said about healing generations of this particular, what should I call it? An affliction? This particular affliction. I have heard from several women who have come before me, who are generations older than me, who have been in that same place in their life where they feel called to walk away for whatever reason. For whatever reason. It could be because there's been some rupture in the relationship, or it could just be out of nowhere. It feels like it comes out of nowhere. And later on, they might say that it felt like a calling home to themselves. And for whatever reason, they probably struggled with the decision to do so and probably waited until it had gotten pretty bad, whether it gets pretty bad in the relationship or it gets pretty bad in their own bodies. And circling all of that back to what that has to do with me giving you an update on where I'm at. Looking back in 2023, early 2023, it's always easier to kind of look back on our timeline to see what was happening. It's hard to see sometimes when we're in it. For me personally, I think that the great quote unquote falling apart, I felt some pricklings way off in the distance when my father died in 2016, in late 2016. It was my own personal rupture in terms of a small part of a spiritual awakening. And in that I had just never experienced that tremendous amount of grief before, and that sort of emotional turmoil coupled with the intensity of it, given that it was my father. And, it kind of pushed me to look at things about the relationship I had with my dad that I hadn't before. It pushed me to look at the relationship I had with both of my parents like I had never had before. And so that can be a real sort of awakening for people when something like that happens in our lives. So that was 2016. 2019, I experienced a major career growth and success with the release of How to Stop Feeling Like Shit. It was a major milestone in my life. And so grappling with the mental and emotional changes that it forced me to face, it was a really, really big year, 2019, personally for me and professionally. And then 2020 happened. And I've told this story many times on the show. 2020 sort of cracked me open with the pandemic in terms of my own personal nervous system couldn't catch a break. I've also turned 45 in 2020. So it was really felt for me truly the onset of the more kind of potent perimenopause symptoms. And then early 2022 is when I made the decision and sort of gathered at my own self-leadership to give it one final bit of a Hail Mary, if you will, in my marriage. And thankfully my former husband was on board with that. And we spent the majority of 2022 from January to October really working on our marriage. And it was brutal. It was brutal. I cannot speak for him and I will never speak for him. But it was brutal for me, and which led us to the decision that we made in early 2023. And so that whole time was Chiron's coming for me. I'm in perimenopause. and all of these things are happening. And then so when finally I made the announcement in summer of 2023, that was really truly, I was about ankle to knee deep in the spiritual journey that I have taken over the last 2.5 years. And I've come a very, very long way. This girl has been moving through this whole thing. And I've talked about it here on the show that I felt like it's the longest sunrise, that the kind of coming back around the corner has been profound and beautiful and stunning, and has brought me to my knees more than once and has been exhilarating and fulfilling. And I finally feel like I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting to know myself. Like I'm getting to know all of the versions of myself. Like I feel like I've sort of confronted this graveyard of versions of me who I have shed and then been reborn. It's been a big deal. And I say all this not to sit here and pontificate about my own experiences or navel gaze about it at all. I really don't want that to be the case. I want it to be sort of a overview of what it could look like, what a major existential midlife awakening can look like. I think that they are longer than sometimes we think they might be. And there's so much to be found and so much to learn. And I will tell you that part of the reason that I wanted to come and do this, and I hope you have stayed this long, is that if you are feeling yours coming on, or if you're also in the beginning or middle or wherever you are in your own pretty massive journey, especially if it's around midlife, I can assure you, you are not the only one. And I can assure you that even people like me who write several self-help books and who get on the microphone every week and who are doing the real work and who are also living through this fucking dumpster fire that is happening in the United States and beyond, I'm not the only one going through a spiritual crisis. Our country is as well. But at any rate, here we are, right? Here I am. And my main point is that, yes, you're not alone at all. And what a rite of passage. What a beautiful rite of passage. You're normal. And it is, I will tell you also, it's a lot easier to walk through if you surrender to the process and know that it's normal, know that it's a gift. It is an absolute gift to be able to be handed this. Chiron is a gift. I believe so, 100%. And the last thing that I want to say is about relationships and where you might be. So your girl's got to pay the bills around here. I'm going to take one more ad break. And when we get back, I'm going to sum it up and tell you some things. I'll probably do a little bit of channeling over here. Who knows? But we'll be right back. This show is sponsored by MIDI Health. Listen, there are times in life when we practice acceptance. I talk about it all the time here on the show. We let things go, we breathe through it, we rise above. But menopause, not one of those times. If you're in perimenopause or menopause and something feels off in your body and you're being told you're too young, it's just stress, or your symptoms are normal, don't let them tell you that. If your hair is thinning, your sleep is not okay, your mood is on a roller coaster and someone just shrugs it off, don't let them. If hot flashes are hijacking your life or it's taking months or years to get real answers, don't let them. You deserve actual care, not dismissal or gaslighting, and no outdated information from a system that was never built with midlife women in mind in the first place. That's why I love what MIDI Health is doing. They're a virtual clinic created by women for women, specializing in midlife hormonal transitions. They personalize treatment, offer FDA-approved hormonal and non-hormonal options, and they're available 24/7. And yes, they take insurance. This is about advocating for yourself. This is about better care, period. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.
Now at the Home Depot, receive 12 months special financing and free basic installation on carpet projects with LifeProof with pet-proof technology, Home Decorators Collection, and Traffic Master carpets. Bring a new look to your floors, or give them a durable surface that stands up to life's tough messes. Get 12 months special financing on installed carpet projects right now at the Home Depot. Offer valid March 12th through March 29th, 2026. Exclusions and additional charges may apply. For licenses, see homedepot.com/license numbers.
You know you need fiber for a healthy gut, but do you actually know how to get it? Quaker's been serving up fiber since 1877, with over 100 great-tasting, good source of fiber options to choose from. Whether you like old-fashioned oats, instant oatmeal, granola, or oatmeal squares, Quaker makes it delicious. So good. Get your fiber with Quaker. Shop Quaker's good source of fiber products at a store near you.
Okay, we're back. I mentioned before the break about what's happening in our country and how, the atrocities and everything. And as a side effect of that, people are starting to wake up, right? And what I mean by that more specifically is we're seeing a lot of people who are finally understanding things like how systems work. And I'll talk about just, the US, but obviously it goes beyond that. And so, for instance, patriarchy and what it actually means. I think that patriarchy has earned itself such a bad reputation with the name of it, and it can be seen as, oh, don't talk about that, it's division. Well, I just started calling it our culture. So our culture is a system and it has a name, and it's patriarchy. And I think that when we start to, I think that a lot of you listening, if not all of you listening, understand how it works and can see it in real time. But there are a lot of people that don't. And so they're starting to wake up to it, a lot of women, as well as systems like capitalism and racism and all these systems that, and a lot of colonialism, right? All these systems that have been at play for many, 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 many years, long before you and I were born. And so we're not just sort of individually waking up, but I think as a collective, we're starting to feel that energy as it's happening. And for you listening and for me, perhaps you've been aware of these systems for a long time. But whether you are or whether you aren't, I think it's hard to ignore sort of the collective consciousness, if you will, the collective energy that you may or may not feel around you. And that is the same thing that can happen to us as individuals. And I think that that is something that can happen to many women when they are in relationships or marriages that are no longer serving them. When you start to slowly wake up and realize that it's just not for you, that it's just not for you. I'll just say that. And perhaps it's been a message that's been trying to get a hold of you for a long time and you haven't been listening. I will say this. I talk to women regularly who are either in the midst of leaving a long marriage and maybe they've told their partner and it's not going well, and so they're doubting that they should leave and maybe they should work on it, or they're further down and it's just a really difficult situation and they're second guessing it, or they tell me about their relationship and it's very clear that they are not happy and that they're unfulfilled and they're either not ready to see it yet, or they see it and they're not ready to make any changes yet. All of those places to be are normal and part of the process along the journey. If you're in any of those places and you are stalled or feel frozen and don't know what to do, that's part of the process. There's nothing wrong with you. My heart definitely wants to give you a hug because I understand how frustrating that place can be. But at any rate, I talk to women all the time that are in that place, the same place I was in for many years. And so I think I want to leave you with the following. If you are in that place where you're not sure and you think perhaps, because I know I had thought this before, I thought to myself, if things continue the way they are, I can't stay for decades. I knew that. And if you're there, or if you're even like mildly questioning, here's what I want to say. Keep following the breadcrumbs. Keep following the breadcrumbs that will be placed in front of you so that you can come to whatever decision that you might be struggling to make when the time is right. And the time might not feel right, but just know that it is right when it happens. And when I say make a decision, it might be asking your partner to go to therapy to see what happens from there, to see what their answer is. It might be to actually kind of, pull the plug and call it and your long relationship. It might be really anything, but my ask is just that you follow the breadcrumbs, the one that led you to this particular podcast, the one that leads you wherever it is that you're going, where you really truly feel it is the right direction for you, even though it might be slightly unsure at the time. Our relationships are one of the most important aspects to our physical, mental, and emotional health that there is. And it can also be a huge part of our spiritual health. And when that relationship or relationships aren't fulfilling for long periods of time, I want to make sure I say that very clearly, because your relationships aren't going to be 100% fulfilling all the time. But when it goes on longer than it should, the unfulfilling part, and or you feel that intuitive calling that you might need to make a decision about that, those are the breadcrumbs that I want you to follow, and just keep listening for it instead of pushing it away and second guessing yourself and self-abandoning over and over again, which is something that I did for years. My hope is that you continue to follow the breadcrumbs earlier on. After I released the podcast episode in 2023, I got several emails from podcast listeners, and I'm just going to read you a little bit of those. I'm not going to read their names or anything, but so one person wrote to me, and I'll read you a little excerpt of what she said. She said, "I've been there just 8 years ago when the fear of staying in the relationship was greater than the courage it took to leave. But shit, it wasn't easy. Nothing about it was, except for the pride I felt in finally showing up for myself, for saying yes to me and my soul. My ex recently told me that he realized I must have felt like a bird in a cage." And someone else wrote and says, "Dear Andrea, I just listened to your podcast update. Divorce just plain sucks, every single piece of it. But the other side will always be better." And the last one I want to read to you briefly is from a person who was also in recovery in 12-step programs, and she was writing a little bit about that. And she said, the AA Big Book defines grace as, I'm going to use the word universe here. She says, the AA Big Book dictionary defines grace as this: the universe's unmerited divine assistance giving to someone for their moral and spiritual rebirth. And then she goes on to say something about rebirth, dying spiritually, and being reborn, living two lives in one. All of that feels like such a gift. And then she says, "You are a gift. Thank you for your words, your courage, and most importantly, your platform." And so honestly, it was these messages that made me write a note to myself when I released that to give an update. And I recently found that note in my Google Drive, and I was like, holy shit, I never did that update episode. And so here I am doing it now, 2.5 years later. And when I tell you, it is very true what everyone says, you're going to blink and the years are going to go by. I always say that. I know that about my children being teenagers now. And it is absolutely true about big life, monumental, uncomfortable things like leaving a marriage or a long relationship. And so I wanted to come here and give you a kind of messy, unorganized, but albeit update around when I left my marriage a few years ago, and there will be more. Also, I am doing my best to be consistent on Substack, so I would love if you followed me over there. And also, last thing, if you have made it this far to this episode, I am new in reading astrological birth charts, especially for people who have their Chiron in wherever it is, even if it's not Aries. That's the one that I always like to see which house it falls in, because that will tell you some things, whether you've already gone through it or you haven't yet. But if you want, and I'm not going to announce this anywhere else except right here, I do single sessions at a discounted rate for $77. I would be willing to do a handful of birth charts for those of you who are interested. So if you head on over to AndreaOwen.com/single, the single means for a single session, you can book that, and then we'll be in touch to get your information. I will need to know your birth date, your place of birth, and the time that you were born in order to read your birth chart. So I'm excited to be able to do that for a few of you who listen to this particular episode. That link will also be in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's our life journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey, did you know there's free secret podcast episodes waiting for you that are not part of my regular podcast feed? Yes, AndreaOwen.com/free. And you just sign up. You get a link sent to you. It's very secret. It's like a secret club. We don't have a secret handshake. Don't worry about that. But it's these motivating podcast episodes that I made for you. They're under 20 minutes each. There's 3 of them. They're for wherever you are in your life. So head on over there and grab them. They range from really supporting you and seeing you where you are and being compassionate, all the way to giving you a giant kick in your ass and telling you how amazing and gorgeous and phenomenal you are. So AndreaOwen.com/free and get your hands on that free podcast feed.
The UPS Store is making packing and shipping Easter gifts quicker than ever this year with UPS Air. How quick? Quicker than a walk around the park. Quicker than eating all the Easter candies. Quicker than finding a golden egg that you know is stuffed with cash. When you ship UPS Air at the UPS Store, your items arrive on time or your money back. Guaranteed at no extra cost. Exclusively at the UPS Store U.S. retail locations. Send Easter joy on time at the UPS Store. Visit the upsstore.com/air guarantee for full details. Terms and conditions apply.